Hi and welcome. Today I just want to give a quick overview about the new plans for meeting C++ recruiting. And so let's get started. Last year got me thinking. We did have 92 candidates and 2 companies which came to the job fair. Um, and I want to put more effort again into doing hiring with meeting C++, but I also want to do some things differently, offer different things, and I have new ideas from last year. The general trend from 2023 and 2024 has been very clear that the job fair is still seen in a very positive light by employers, but that they just often either lack the time to come to the event or lack the funding because they already, have spent a lot of funding on hiring agencies, which they hire not only C++ from, but they also hire other people from those agencies. So it will be, that kind of a point that we need to go also to include those agencies when we actually want to cover the full job market for C++. And on the other point, I see also with other things like sponsorships, and in the last 2 years that sponsors which have been traditionally sponsoring for HR reasons have become more rare. They're not like completely gone, but some of them are like, just not there present at the moment. And also the job fair shows us clearly. So the other point was the job fair is just maybe it's by some folks seen as a pandemic thing, and that we should do other things now. So let's give that a spin with adding new things to the hiring offering of Meeting C++. And last fall, I already had the idea of starting a jobs newsletter for C++. And while I really liked the idea, it also came to my mind that with a conference coming up, I would not have the time to properly implement that and plan that and talk to folks about it. I'd be much more busy with the conference. So the thing I did last fall is that basically you could subscribe to that jobs newsletter as a first step at Meeting CPP. And you can do that now for about half a year, and there's already a nice stock of people submitted there. And then 2 weeks ago, I kind of learned that on LinkedIn, you can add a newsletter to your profile. And so the C++ jobs newsletter was then again coming into the center of my work, where I have, invested in the last weeks a lot in talking to people and doing research and in implementing some of the things on the website to feed this. And this is kind of, almost ready to be kicking off. So the jobs newsletter, as I envision it, is like right now on LinkedIn, and I, share the link with you when we're done. And I think it's also in the event description for the jobs newsletter, and you find it on my profile. But anyways, the jobs newsletter, which I actually want to talk about, is it's going to be like bi-weekly. Maybe it's even weekly, because that's just, what it is. But it depends on the number of jobs. And then I do have the newsletter for my LinkedIn page, which you probably know. And back then when I created that, I found out that you can only have one. I was like, that's a bit sad. But now I can have multiple, and now I'm going to play a bit more with that. And so the monthly newsletter is going to stay on the page, and I'm thinking about, for the start, to have a monthly jobs newsletter also on that part, but that's probably gonna stop at some point after this year when we have enough people in the jobs newsletter itself. And posting jobs is free. That's right now still a bit work in progress. The basic form works, but I have to basically, when everything is implemented, I have to do an end-to-end test, and then we can go live with it, and not prior. And that will be in April. So I do want to quickly mention that the focus of the newsletter will be on C++ jobs. I do not want to, send a weekly career-focused newsletter. That's not my business. So I don't plan to do storytelling. It's not going to be some 10 ways of something with your C++ job search or like interview tips, etc. It doesn't mean that we will not have that. We probably, if there's interest in that, and if I find people, want to cover that or advertise that, I'd not be totally against it, but it's not going to be about that. The jobs newsletter will always fundamentally be driven by links to C++ jobs. Okay. And at that point, I also want to clear out one thing is I'm not a headhunter, right? I think that some people, yes, you can. I share CVs, and we're gonna go to this in a minute. But I do not have companies like talk to me about their open positions, and I'm not looking for them to fill those positions. That's other people's job, and I'm very happy with that. So when you look for C++ jobs on LinkedIn, and then you have to put that in quotes because otherwise you'll find a lot of other interesting jobs with C in it. You see that there's still a lot of open positions around with 650 jobs for C++ right now. And in the prior week, it was like something 512 or something like that. Makes sense. And LinkedIn showed me that in the time between the 1 week that there were 123 new. I have not yet done an in-depth analysis of those jobs openings, but I think like with quotes in C++, they mostly should be C++ positions, but of course it's also with other IT software related job postings, probably that C++ is somewhere mentioned. But it's nice to see that there's like, even if it's only 50% of actual C++ positions, there's always 300 positions on LinkedIn for that currently in Germany. I do lack a little bit of the historic context, so I cannot tell you how much that was like a year ago or something. But that's a big advantage of having those slides and doing this like probably like in a year ago. Then we will be able to kind of see how was it in a year or next quarter. Be able to compare that in the future. And most of these positions are from agencies and from services, which run this on LinkedIn, and you also kind of see like every single one of them is promoted, which again costs money. And so it's not so much, as I already mentioned, that employers are directly currently on the job market. They are more like indirectly by hiring an agency they work with. And so I want to work together with those agencies because that seems to be how the market is currently working. And so I will offer them to become partners. And that's a new goal for Meeting C++ Recruiting, to give them access to the resume uploads, but also to include them into the newsletter and basically also have their positions in the newsletter. And that then gives, the headhunters which are working for those agencies a direct stream of available candidates, and gives those agencies a big advantage over the other agencies on the market which don't work with Meeting C++. Quick word on the online job fair. Should probably mention that, and you might be aware about that. That was supposed to happen yesterday, but we just did not have any interest from employers to be present even, or to spend money and sponsor this. This seems to be very hard, and maybe March is too early for some, and also I've not done like too many sales talks for the job fair. It always has been more kind of my own reach, and I'm thinking about changing that, and together with a more advanced offering I have now. So I do want to keep this as an employer-focused event in the overall offering for the recruiting. And if you look at it, if you look at the high times, we really had a working system there. So that's something which I want to keep and which I want to go back to and to improve again. If we look at the last 2 years, there's basically all powered by the job fair 23, 24, 25. The top 10 countries are India, Germany, United States, Brazil, Netherlands, United Kingdom, Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, Poland, France. So you see it's very international, but there's a strong focus on Europe and then a little bit of US, and of course India is always there. Because just it's like, I saw like a few folks from China now also joining in, so maybe you get also more Chinese if things are opening there. But generally right now, when talking to the agencies, German and United States seems to be kind of the thing. But I also think that with the jobs newsletter, we will see a big of a change here, that we reach more into other countries and have other candidates submit. So that's just a change which we will see. The next online job fair is planned for end of May. And with all the talking, etc., I'll do in the next weeks, I have good hopes that we're able to fill the event in some part, and that we have a good job fair in May in the second quarter. And as I mentioned, I plan to keep this aiming directly at employers, which have open positions at the moment, but I have to see how the recruiting partners can be included there if they have an interest to spend 3 hours with the community there. But that's like a point of open debate in the future. And all this will, of course, also be powered by the CV sharing form. It's like the data point I showed you there. This generates a lot more data points, which I have showed in the past and didn't include them this time, because I just want to focus on the new things with the jobs newsletter. And so, call to action at the moment. If you're looking for a job, then subscribe to the jobs newsletter, and I'll share the link to that in the chat in a minute. And you, of course, can share your CV resume via my website. And what I do at the moment is I have a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings in the last weeks already, and the next weeks, once this is built and everything which needs to be done in early April is done, then I have a lot of conversations before Easter with hiring companies, agencies, headhunters, sponsors from a conference which are hiring, etc. All this will be happening in the next weeks. And for this week, I plan to write the first jobs newsletter, which then, of course, will not include jobs itself, but basically will be just like what I covered in this talk, and also then will link to this video on YouTube probably, or here on LinkedIn directly, which is probably easier, to just send a first newsletter. Because last week I sent the first newsletter for the other new thing I put on the profile as a newsletter, as a blog roll. For 10 years, I've been putting the blog roll on the website, and for a few years now, you also can subscribe by email on my website for that. And I thought, why not open that also to LinkedIn when I have newsletters here? And last Friday, I sent that newsletter out of curiosity because I had 6 subscribers on it. And now it has like 1,270, probably 1,300 by the end of the week when I sent the second edition to LinkedIn. So that showed me that it's kind of gives me a big boost in the subscribers, probably when I share a first newsletter, which like this isn't like when we're ready, just prior to that, gives me a bit better numbers to talk to the agencies and advances the overall plans. And then the second quarter is basically what I will be doing, mostly focusing on this area. So yeah, launches in April, and almost everything is ready for that. I think next week I have everything ready, then I do end-to-end testing and start talking to agencies and everyone. Already have like a list of people I want to talk to. And then the other thing which I have to start working on next week is this year's conference. The that announcement also. I hope to get ready for next week. And once that is out and the ticket shops is opened and all the forms for the conference are working, I can go back to the recruiting and take care of that until Easter. We are like 100% launched in all of those things. And then the recruiting part just, I think will then be live in April and take off in May. And that's what the current plans are. The trial for the recruiting partners and the newsletter especially will be in Q2, and then I think that will be fully integrated into Meeting C++ from that point on into the future. So thanks for listening. Let me look in the chat if you have any questions. So is employer participation in the online fair really so expensive that it can be prohibitive? If so, does it have to? No, I don't think it's too expensive. I just straightforward. If you have an agency fill a position, then you pay them usually 20 to 30% of the yearly salary, right? So companies could save a lot of money by directly hiring through Meeting C++. I don't take that. I'm not a recruiter. That's not the basis I'm working on. But of course, there is the other component, and the other component is just that my main reach is not into HR and into deciders in HR, which could say, yeah, we're going there with our open positions, but into folks which work for C++ in those companies, and they might not have the leverage on HR as much as they had when it was a big problem to find C++ people. And then it was probably way easier to have those employers come to the job fair. Right now, they are getting their positions filled by the agencies which they are contracted with and which they already have their other positions also filled, which are not C++, which I cannot fill. I don't want to be an overall hiring job. There's a question about, are there any recommended certifications in C++? I don't offer one, and I've seen like only one company actually when you look for it, I think offering it. I think that taking courses on Udemy and other learning platforms probably will give you some form of certificate of attendance. Often it is GitHub projects, which are kind of seen as proof of your talent. And then, of course, it has become very common for employers to give you some programming problem, and that you can, for every single position you're looking for, plan on to spending a few hours on some programming problem. That seems to be the common thing right now, and in recent years just has become a common thing, which I'm not happy about. It like that, people make you work 6-7 hours to prove your programming progress and solving a certain problem. But that seems to be rather where the market has gone, instead of having like a certification or like a central authority on that. So no, I don't think that a certification on the market exists which is recognized by employers at the moment. Which GitHub project portfolio do you recommend to have as a must? Which code standard do you know is most seeking for jobs? I think generally, having thought about that already puts you into into the upper 50% of the crowd. I can't answer that mostly because I'm not a recruiter. I don't know, the companies never talk to me about what they want to see for a position, right? And from the job fair, I've seen it differs widely. It also differs widely how companies behave towards candidates. I've seen companies answer every single one. I've seen companies just talk to specific ones which they've been interested in, etc. So GitHub project portfolio, I think it's probably better to have a few good ones than to have like 20 projects and then someone looking at your GitHub profile doesn't know where to look at. So I would think that you should be focused, and it also depends on where you're coming from and where you want to go to. If you want to work in finance, then maybe finance focused projects will be better than just general C++. But that depends on you, and also depends on what is your motivation to create projects and what to write and code up to. So I can't really answer the question for you, but I think that generally this acts as people wanting to see what your experience with C++ is. So I think it would be very, very important if you have those projects that when I look at those projects that I directly see what libraries they use, what are your thoughts about them in the technical sense, why do you use those libraries, for example? What standards do you use? And maybe something about the build system or something like that. Just that you show not just like this is my C++ project, but like the recruiter, and let's be honest, this will be a recruiter and they don't have a lot of time. So show them basically the basic information which they want to see directly, and then, have the skills to answer questions about those projects. And I do think that just, as I mentioned, a lot of companies have, gone to either use complete platforms for doing coding related tasks, or have their own coding related tasks which you need to solve, and then you sometimes don't even get feedback on if you did it the right way or not. If they just don't think you'll pass, then you don't pass, and that's it. And requiring code standard, there is a whole lot of tools which you might know about and which I know about, but I don't know if Recruiter knows about. Anything like with Clang Tidy. Clang Tidy can also format things, and Clang is very powerful in this approach, and it's integrations with that. There is a whole bunch of tools. Depends on your tool sets you use. But basically, if you're able to talk about your setup and why you use it, or just like have maybe some document that documents your setup and why you use it, will, I think, put you ahead of the curve already. And that's my thoughts so far. Thank you for coming to the stream.